Rick Bryant. Getting a little bit of an echo. Rick is the executive director of the Central Pennsylvania Festival of the Arts. He comes from my home county in Center County. He and I shared a few words at dinner, and I also had the honor to talk to Tara, with 2 R's, a little bit about Rick to find out a little more than what's in his biography.
I know, it was hard.
It's okay, Rick. In addition to Rick actually managing numerous professional, civic, and charitable organizations, he and his team also host and put on the Arts Fest, which many of us know and love in State College, as well as First Night, which I know my family very much looks forward to every year. It's a tradition for us. Interesting fact about Rick, I did peruse his blog as well, so I encourage all of you. He is a fantastic writer. I almost felt like I went along with you on your trips. In addition to the pictures, telling your story through pictures, which I do as well. I enjoy your writing style. He also, interesting fact, was born in the old hospital in Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, which, by the way, is where our Penn State Extension office is in Center County. So I thought that was a little neat fact. So please help me welcome Rick.
Thank you, Tara. Now, we're trying to turn down the lights a little bit.
I will try. Let me interject.
Okay.
I may have to take them up before I take them down.
That's fine.
All right, so just give me a second so they go up.
I wear sunglasses at night.
Everybody close your eyes.
Yeah, so I come from like a art historical background, so I don't like to look at the slides in a light room. You get a little more contrast if the lights are down a little low. And we all look better.
Oh yeah, that's much better.
That's good.
Can I help a little bit?
That is fantastic.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now this is going to require like chewing gum and walking at the same time. You're holding a mic, doing a slide ticker. Next time I'm going to put in my rider that I'm going to label your mic. So and no red M&Ms. So, this is some of my rule class. They came to help me. They come every year to the Arts Festival to help pick up the trash, and we have a heck of a good time, don't we, Senator Judy Ward?
We do.
So I'm a history buff, and so we're going to start out with a quote from one of our most quotable founding fathers. That's Ben Franklin. Doing nothing for others is the undoing of ourselves. So, and I will say that the opposite is true, that doing something for others can be the making of yourself. At least that's sort of what my story is. My also story is that my talk is, all the pages are in different order. Next, note to self, staple them next time. Okay, here's page 1. So, here's page 2. Pretty soon I'll get this by process of elimination. Page 3. Oh, page 4. Gosh. I shouldn't have written a talk that's so long. It would have been a lot easier to do this. Oh, here we go. Boom. Boom. It's close. In case you're wondering, I was actually voted the clumsiest person in my high school class, and now you can see why. So, anyway, the first time I had any contact with Rule, I was called out of the blue by JD to come speak to a group of Canadian rural leaders who were in State College. This was during our festival. It's my busiest time of year. And for whatever reason, I said yes, sure I'd go. Because I figured, if I sold them on the place, they would leave the hotel and come downtown and spend money, which is really what the Arts Festival is all about. So one of the foundational axioms of show business is know your audience. So I was speaking to Canadians. I don't know jack about Canada. but I did a little research, and that's where I learned about Marion Pearson, this woman right here. So her husband, Lester Pearson, he was the Prime Minister of Canada in 1967. Interestingly enough, he's also a Nobel Peace Prize winner. He won the Nobel Peace Prize in 1957 for helping stop the Mideast War. Anyway, so there are the Pearsons greeting Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip when they came to open Expo 67. So anyway, Marion Pearson said, "Behind every successful man stands a surprised woman." So, I work with a lot of women, they all believe this. So, and the Canadians liked it that I was, Canadian literate. What do you know? So now, with Mrs. Pearson's words in mind, I'm going to talk about what I do and how I got here. So, Sarah mentioned the Arts Fest. That's what some people call it. I do not call it Arts Fest because, for example, my given name is Richard. I do not like to be called Dick. So, and when I explain Arts Fest like that, people are like, oh, I get it. So it's okay to call us the Arts Festival or our full name, but Arts Fest, I really don't like that. Anyway, how many of you have been? Raise your hand. Okay, you all need to come. It's July 8th through 12th this year. Well, like you'd come and spend some money and have a good time. So, we are an independent 501c3 organization. We're not a part of Penn State. We're not a part of the Borough State College. And over 5 days, we have an audience of about 130,000 people. The centerpiece of the Arts Festival is called the Sidewalk Sale and Exhibition. It's an outdoor art fair, so where artists sell the work that they've made. Each person in the festival is the individual artist. We don't have manufacturers' reps. So that person, like Dan Baxter right there, he actually made those robots. So we give out prizes. Our top prize is about $3,000. And we are, now, here's where my mother would say I'm in danger of breaking my arm by patting myself on the back. We are one of the top art shows in the country. So people want to come here. We have about 800 applicants for the 300 spots in the show. We also have music. We have 3 outdoor stages. We have some indoor venues too, and we present everything from R&B to rock and roll to singer-songwriters. And this guy's main qualification is he's good looking. He hasn't quite made it yet. And everything in between. Has anybody seen the Hormel commercial with the guy with the accordion? This is Alex Meitzner. He's actually a Penn State music grad. And he tours all over the country playing the accordion. He's kind of like a punk accordionist. So we present theater, and every now and then we'll do a silent movie with a live orchestra or a theater organ. We have street painting. This street painting is sponsored by Board Transportation and Logistics. Yay, Judy. We do depend on sponsorship to help pay for the festival. So we have artists who paint on the street with special pastels. So we have a banner competition. We've been doing this since 1967. We have about 300 banners. They're all a uniform 30 by 72 inches, and we hang them above the streets of State College. We have a full day of kids' activities. We have a kids' sidewalk sale where junior artists who are from 8 to 18 can sell work that they've made, and they range from the unbelievably talented, like Drew Spielvogel here, whose drawings will just knock your socks off, to what we would call more entrepreneurial kids who, like my great nephews who like painted rocks. So, pardon me, this is where you can go to the bathroom. So, we have 400 volunteers. So, about 400 volunteers. We used to say we had about 1,000, and then we bought t-shirts for everybody. We didn't need nearly that many. Volunteers do everything from picking up the trash to working in information booths. And some of our volunteers are quite they've been there a long time, and if you like give somebody their shift, somebody else, you will hear about it. So, but it's a fun time. People sort of get their psychic paycheck by volunteering for us. We also do, as Tara said, First Night State College. So First Night State College is an alcohol-free celebration of the new year. It takes place in downtown State College, and it includes ice sculpture. We have one of the largest displays in Pennsylvania. We have music in churches and public buildings. We have resolution sculptures. These are artist-created objects where you go up and you sort of publicly name your New Year's resolution. This one is called Edison's Clothesline. It sort of looks like a clothesline with Christmas lights on it, and it's an interpretation of how in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, when people used to live in a row house and hang their wash out, the women or men who would do this would talk over the fence, and that's what this was inspired by. So somebody is going to increase the world's awesomeness. I always sort of chum this sculpture and go out and write "Be nicer to my boss," and then show my coworkers. They roll their eyes, but it's one of our New Year's traditions. So we have a run too, a 5K resolution run that we encourage people to do in costume, hence the chicken costume. That's not just some like nut ball there. So, and first night depends on about 75 volunteers. It's a much smaller event, and it's actually quite difficult to get people to go out at 8 in the morning on New Year's Day, to clean up after it. So, and if you're wondering why that 2020 looks kind of funny there, this is the year of the rat, and the ice sculptures, you can see the rats on the top of the ice sculpture. So, we also do a little bit of public art too. This is, if anybody's been to the local whiskey bar in downtown State College, this guy's name is Downtown Eugene Brown. He's a sculpture of an older gentleman. He's wearing Beats headphones, he has an iPad, and he has a book in his pocket. He's waiting for the bus. The book is Great Expectations, a little visual pun there. And Eugene actually has a Twitter account, and he tweets about Penn State sports and events in downtown State College. So when we ran the nationwide contest to commission the artist to do this project. So I'm from State College, but going to Penn State, my parents lived in State College. That didn't really do a lot for me. So I went to the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, now more known for, the Unite the Right rally. So, and this is an average student from 1853 at UVA, and this is what they said about him. Someplace it's here. Gosh, how incompetent can I possibly be? Oh, here we go. It gives me great pleasure to say that although the vivacity of these blooded colts at the university frequently leads them to all sorts of deviltries and excesses, they almost invariably have the manners of gentlemen. So I was a little better at the deviltries than I was at being a gentleman. This is actually a fraternity party weekend that we used to have, and now it's sort of like unsafe and we don't do that anymore. So, I don't know why.
One guy calls off the guys.
So, after college, I came back to State College and worked in my family's insurance business. I worked with my father, which is good points and bad points. Has anybody seen Double Indemnity? Probably nobody. Oh, yeah. This is a yay Dave. It's a 1944 classic film noir starring Miss Barbara Stanwyck, if anybody watched The Big Valley. She was the matriarch in The Big Valley, and Fred McMurray, from My Three Sons. And the plot of the movie was that she was a femme fatale, wanted to whack her husband, and Fred McMurray, the insurance man, helped her. And in the end, nothing good happens to Fred McMurray, let me tell you. So in the insurance business, I didn't really think it would be like, Double Indemnity, I thought it'd be like Don Draper, I would wear a suit, and carry a briefcase. Actually, I envision myself as the sexy Don Draper.
He's not sexy at all.
You are!
Yeah, thank you. Oh, I need to turn on my hearing aid. But actually, I was a geek, so, And here I became what's called a CPCU, a Chartered Property and Casualty Underwriter. And this is somebody who has like a graduate degree in insurance. Because my father told me that I would never make it on my personality. I had to be smarter than the next person. So I have a very supportive family. So here I am in 1980 something at my CPCU graduation, looking like a geek. So, but I credit my time, and I spent 20 years in the insurance business, with teaching me the secret to success. So, when I got my CPCU designation, I went to the national conference, which was in San Antonio that year. 4,000 insurance men and women under one roof. Like, you don't know what kind of fun that is. Like, kill me now, right? So, has anybody been to a conference with 4,000 people? Yeah, so they pay, one of the things that they do is there's always an inspirational speaker. So they had some guy come, and they paid him untold numbers of dollars to get him to come, and to tell us about the secret of success. And so, this is what I learned. It was show up on time, dressed, and ready to play. And this guy probably, earned $50,000 from those pearls of wisdom. So, hey, it was worth the trip to San Antonio with 3,999 other insurance men. So, when I came back, all jazzed up about ready to play, I joined the State College JCs, which is a service club, kind of like the Rotary. I don't know if they still have JCs. It's sort of like the Rotary or Lions Club. And as a service project, we picked up the trash at the Arts Festival. This is when I was just, 20-something, just a schmo. And the food of choice at the Central Pennsylvania Festival of the Arts is something called chicken on a stick. So they're chicken thighs. The vendor sells thousands, like 6,000 of these chicken dishes. And as you might guess, the stick pokes a hole in the trash bag. So you get chicken on a stick juice running down your leg. Right, Judy? Yeah, so that's all kind of fun. But actually, because I showed up on time, dressed, and ready to play, I got promoted out of the trash crew. And somebody said, hey, we have this thing called the Ambassador Committee, which is really like artist services. And if an artist's car breaks down, you tell them how to get to the garage. Or, if they go to the hospital with kidney stones, which is something that actually happened, you can sit in their booth and sell their work. Something like that. Way better than having chicken on a stick juice go into your shoes. I said, sign me up. And next thing you know, I was like on the committee running the whole thing. So, which is, it all started with picking up the trash. So that was a lot of fun. And then one day, excuse me, in 1998, I had the proverbial eureka moment that, excuse me, I hated selling insurance. I mean, that was good living, but, it wasn't satisfying. And I wasn't putting a kid through Harvard. It took me like 20 years to figure that out, that I didn't have a tuition bill to worry about. So I sold my business with no plan. Oh my God, you're a goddess. Thank you. This is going to be my rider too next time. So I sold my business without a plan. I figured I could always flip burgers. Now, I've never flipped a burger in my life. I have worked in a convenience store, which is really worse than flipping burgers, but I figured I could do something. And it's, I really lucked out because in just a couple of months, somebody who worked at the Arts Festival, they had a staff of 4 then, she got a big inheritance, quit her job, and they actually hired me and paid me to do pretty much what I was doing for free before. So, I must have a guardian angel. So that's sort of my professional story, but my personal story is probably a little more interesting and relevant. So one day, this was in 1991, I got a call at work from one of my clients. Her name was Deb Hamilton. We had a cordial relationship, but in retrospect, right now, I don't even know what she did for a job. She's moved away. And so she asked me, if I wanted to B, she was calling from the switchboard, which meant the gay and lesbian switchboard of State College. And at which point, like, you could hear my heart go boom, 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 because, I was a typical closeted gay guy, and she wanted me to help out on a new board in State College that was going to work on the problem of HIV/AIDS. So, and back in the pre-internet days, many towns had something like the switchboard, which was a sort of a semi-secret number that if you were gay or lesbian or straight or questioning, you could call up and say, can you tell me where the gay bar is? I need to go to an attorney and I want them to be gay friendly, something like that. And there were volunteers who had all this knowledge that today you just go to the Google machine and put it in, if you even need a gay friendly attorney. So, but back then, people relied on volunteers. And life was much different. Unless you lived in a neighborhood like the Castro here in San Francisco, there were no employment protections for gay and lesbian people. Obviously you couldn't get married. Serving in the military was a no-no. And it was just life was much, much different. So I said, sure, I would help out with HIV/AIDS. I didn't know anybody with HIV/AIDS. But, for whatever reason, when she called, I said yes. And this was a huge learning curve, setting up a new social service agency. We were just 12 people. We weren't particularly prominent. I was the only person who worked in private enterprise. I was still in the insurance business then. And in the 80s and 90s, there was no Obamacare. If you wanted to buy health insurance, you had to be insurable, which meant that you had to take, you had to have a physical, you had to have a blood test, and they could tell if you had HIV. So, the insurance business was considered especially loathsome by activists. So, this was an art project from the late 80s. I really did believe this. If I was silent, people would die. So I, had to do something. So we set up our social service agency. We were a subcontractor of the Department of Health. We had to, write bylaws, find an office, hire staff, do fundraising. These are all things I do in my job today. And that I didn't learn in the insurance business. I learned getting my psychic paycheck. And back then, AIDS was it wasn't just a disease, it was a political movement too, because people lost their jobs, lost apartments, couldn't find a funeral home, that sort of thing. So, there grew up out of that a huge activist community of people pushing the FDA and drug companies for quicker treatments. And actually ACT UP stands for AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And people in ACT UP would go and, do a sit-in at Burroughs Welcome or at the FDA to try to push drugs through the approval pipeline. And it's interesting, when I was preparing this talk, even today, sex is like a political thing, which is, because, I hope you can see this, these are condoms that were being funded by the Utah Department of Health to hand out to people to try to prevent STIs. And they're a little risque. As you can see, the one is SLUT, and that's superimposed on the map of Utah, SL being Salt Lake. So, Salt Lake, Utah spells slut. And, explore Utah's caves. These were, the governor of Utah had a canary, and they were all recalled because, it's interesting that probably the market for this, that, people probably laugh. I don't think that they were handing these out in Mormon churches, but as I said, sex is political. So along the way, I had some experiences that I never, how about this? I never would have had otherwise. Once there was a bar in State College that was called the All-American Rathskeller. That one of their claims to fame was they tried to sell the most cases of Rolling Rock in pony bottles of any bar in the country. And they had something called the case race, and Penn-State students would line up around the block to go in and pay their cover, and they would hand them a case of beer. Right, Tara?
It was great.
And you would drink it, and then go on your merry way and get drunk starting at 9 in the morning. And the owners of the place, in order to give it sort of the, imprimatur of respectability, would charge a cover that they would donate to a social service agency. Well, we had a lot of debates about should we take the money, because when people get drunk, they make bad decisions, and I'm like proof positive of that. I'm like the poster child for bad decisions. But we stood outside and, we're there handing out condoms for anybody who wanted one. Nobody wanted a condom. So, that's when I learned that Penn State students would way rather get drunk than get laid, which is like astonishing to me. It's a lesson I've taken with me. So I got to volunteer for the Names Project AIDS Memorial Quilt, which is the largest piece of folk art in the country. So there are probably 80,000 quilt panels. Each one represents somebody who died of AIDS. So this was on display in Washington, D.C. The last time I saw there was 1996. But anyway, that was a tremendous learning, logistical experience to put it all out there. So, and during my time as president of the AIDS Project, we petitioned to join the United Way, and we were actually kept out for a little bit because we had what was called the pastor of the Assembly of God, who was sort of a big shot at State College, said that we had a gay agenda, which I don't even know what that means. But finally, the United Way figured out that if they added another 2 social service agencies and us at the same time, that it would be, if there was going to be a hue and cry, it would be diluted. And fortunately, there wasn't any hue and cry. And also, fortunately, during my tenure running this, it was about the time that treatments became available. And although it's still a crappy thing to have, it's not a death sentence like it used to be. So, wait, what are the secrets of success?
Show up on time, dressed, and ready to play.
But there's one more that I learned, and that was listen for your call. My call came on the telephone. It was when Deb Hamilton called me and asked me to help. So you might have already gotten your call, and it may be, I'm a Presbyterian, so I sort of frame this in, terms of faith. You might be atheist. I don't care if you're an atheist or not, but you can still get a call. You need to know what your passion is, what you're supposed to do. I wasn't supposed to sell insurance. I wasn't that good at it. As my father said, I have a lousy personality. So, but I knew to listen for my call. So that's the real secret of success here. Listen for your call, then show up on time, dressed, and ready to play. Right? So, now, I used to say, I'm the kind of gay person that's, I'm not, I don't really like RuPaul's Drag Race. I've been to NASCAR. I'm not really into Broadway shows, but here's a slide from Oklahoma. So, Irish Broadway musical. So, this is Adu Annie on the right here. She's famous for singing the song, I'm Just a Girl Who Can't Say No. That's what you all need to be. You need to be the girl. When somebody asks you to do something for your community, you need to be the girl who can't say no and say, yes, I'm in. Because we won't make a better country unless we have that kind of attitude. So since I went to UVA, we always have to have a mandatory quote here from Thomas Jefferson. And since my papers got screwed up, the big long fancy one, I don't know. But I do know that he said, a little rebellion now and then is a good thing, and you all need to keep that in mind too. So there you go. So I'd be delighted to entertain any questions. Oh, thank you so much.
I want to thank Rick. I do want to share what Tara said though, and I waited till after he spoke on purpose because I agree with you. I think you're probably the most extroverted introvert I've ever heard speak. Don't you guys agree? Yes. Yes. Thank you very much. We very much appreciate you sharing your story.
Thank you.
I love what you said about your psychic paycheck, because we all work for a living, but I think we also have that side of ourselves that gets paid for things that we don't get paid for. Any questions or comments for him? Am I good? Hold on. So I first want to say I'm also one of the Frozen chosen. So thank you for speaking us today. And I played Adu Annie as a 19-year-old. So I've already started very young not saying no.
Good.
But I want to ask you, when you switched sectors from insurance to the arts festival, what was the biggest challenge you had? I mean, you had a lot of experience volunteerism, but really switching that as your career. What was the biggest challenge?
Well, actually, one of the biggest challenges, fortunately for me, it was a very short-term challenge. It's hard when you're 40-something and you don't have a job and you meet somebody and like the first question is, what do you do? Like, you know, if you say, well, I'm not working, that's not real cool. So, you know, so friends of mine, you know, had experience with this and they told me to tell, like, I'm doing some writing, I'm talking to some people. I had this little litany that I, you know, went through that made them forget that I didn't have a job. So actually, one of the hardest things was I went from being the boss to not being the boss. That is hard. So, you know, it used to be, you know, I would tell my employees what to do. I just had a couple of them, but I went to a small shop. There were just a couple of people. I wasn't the boss, and, you know, that was kind of hard to learn. So.
Thank you.
So thank you for speaking, and I just want to say, contrary to what people have told you, I think you have a great personality, and I enjoyed your
I really, really enjoyed your presentation, and I just wanted to say thank you for your activism. I mean, I was a child in the well, I was born in '89, but I think, you know, in times of great hardship and when the country looks away, it's people like you that define history, and I just really want to thank you.
I have a question.
When you became the director of the Arts Fest, sorry.
The Arts Fest. We're friends, it's okay.
Did you find yourself having to go back to school for anything?
Actually, no. I worked there for 5 years before I became the director. And actually, the previous director, he was completely burned out of his job. And so they did a nationwide search. They interviewed some other candidates, and they chose me. And you know, it was I hadn't dealt with food vendors. I hadn't dealt with musicians. I hadn't dealt with like sort of the logistics of setting it up. So there was a lot to learn. But my coworkers were very supportive of me getting the job, and so were the people on our board of directors. And so they did a lot of help for me. Now, which is great, because actually on the first day of setting up my first festival, I got run over by a tow truck.
What?
So, yeah.
True story.
I got
True
run,
story.
actually right outside my former boss's wife's window. And never heard from the guy in return. So, and so I literally, we were towing a car, and the tow truck, you know, he was some schmo who didn't know how to drive a standard transmission and start on a hill without rolling backwards. And he rolled back into me and broke my ankle. So, you know, they put me in the ambulance, and they say to the EMT, so, how long have you been an EMT? Oh, I just started. Nice. So, what did you used to do? Oh, I was a bouncer at the Skeller. that makes me feel safe as a New York Jesus. So, they took me to the ER, you know, and they x-rayed my leg, and it looked like a cartoon, you know, and then they said, well, Rick, we're going to operate on you on Thursday, because I had to put some pins and stuff in there. And I said, I don't mean to throw my weight around or anything, but you know, I'm the director of the Arts Festival, and it opens on Wednesday. Can you move my operation up? Because I was so stupid that I thought after you had orthopedic surgery, you felt better. No, you feel way worse. So, and I was having my house remodeled at the time, and I have a dog. So I had to go to a friend's house, you know, they had to take me and the dog, and they had to nurse me, and I was like completely loopy on drugs, and you know, on the painkillers, and I was watching the festival on Channel 10, WTAJ, and the anchor, you know, was like, blah, 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 come to the Arts Fest, come to the Arts Fest, come to the Arts Fest. It's like fingernails on a blackboard to me. And I picked up the phone and I said, it's not the Arts Fest! Everybody calls it the Arts Fest. I said, everybody says faggot too, and that doesn't make
Jokes are bad, jokes are bad.
Rick, you mentioned no red M&Ms. Can you share why?
Well, that's,
It's a weird ask. It's just weird ask, right?
yeah, that's just something that musicians, as I think Van Halen did it, and they did that, and musicians or performers have a rider. This is what they want. They need a bottle of water. They want some tea in their dressing room. And Van Halen put it in there at the bottom to see if the HR, the producer, read the whole thing. So that's the only reason for knowing that, really. And actually, you know, the hardest part of transitioning from the insurance business to, you know, my other life was when I had to come out to my family. Because, you know, I was just, you know, I thought I was passing for straight. And you know, I was going to a protest march in Washington, D.C., and I needed my mother to watch my dog. So I went over. I was actually going with a friend of JD's. I didn't know it at the time. And so I said, you know, well, I'm going to this, you know, I'm going to Washington, there's a big protest march, so I need to tell you I'm gay. And my mother said, that's okay, I won't tell anybody. Would you like to come to lunch tomorrow? That's the last thing she ever said about it. So in my family, like, the emotional bandwidth goes from like 8. But you know what? It's the best thing I ever did. You know, I hadn't been myself. And you know, that's part of your leadership journey. You need to find who all of you are if you don't know that already. So, and you know, Rule is going to help you do that.
Thank you. Just being your authentic self is the best message I think that we can hear.
My only request is, have you ever written a book?
I keep telling you that.
No, I have a blog that actually I haven't written in a while. So, but I sort of told stories on my blog. But I sort of stopped because I thought I was telling the same things. I go to, you know, 4 places. I go to the Jersey Shore, I go to Las Vegas, I go to Charlottesville where I went to college. And, you know, so my story sort of revolved around that. So actually, I really get a lot of satisfaction from writing obituaries. So, because if you can distill somebody's life into just a few sentences, you know, that is something that people, back when we had newspapers, they cut out and keep, and you know, you can just sort of bring that person alive just for 1 second. Yes, Tara.
Did you write Helen Johnson's obituary?
I did not. So, but actually, I had to write my brother's obituary. My brother and I hardly got along at all, and you know, but. He was an interesting character. He collected train horns. That was his passion. He lived in Texas. He collected train horns, and you know, I talked about him going to these horn honks, they're called, or train horns. Collectors get together and they blow their horns and each other's horns, and it's like, and I got to include the line, consequently, his hearing was terrible. And one of my brother's old girlfriends called me up and told me that that was a work of art, and that really like made my day. Because we had a, like sort of a terrible relationship, and you know, that sort of gave us some like positive closure. Yes?
Sorry. As a follow-up, if you ever do publish anything, or if you do continue with the blog, please at least email me, if not the entire middle class, because you have fantastic stories.
Thank you. So, my blog it's called The Wandering Wahoo. You can go there. So, actually, one of my favorite posts is about UVA football in the 1970s when I was in school, because our best year was we were 3-10, but actually people took signs in Latin to the stadium and said, our coach was Sonny Randall, and it said "Sick Transit Randall," which is actually the Virginia State model well, no, it means thus passes Randall. And so it's, life was different then, so please go.
Life was different then.
I think we could have been best friends. I think we probably are the same age, because I came of age in the 70s as well. So thank you so much.
Wide lapels, lots of
Oh, absolutely. All day long. Okay, thank you so much. Round of applause for our speakers. I'd like to welcome J.D.